Hello everyone and welcome to Building Web Applications. My name is Steve Bishop from ProgrammingMadeEasy.com, and in this video we're going to be covering CSS colors. More specifically, we're going to go over the different types of color values you can set in your CSS. We're going to go over some helpful tools for selecting your colors, and finally we'll see a demonstration of how to add colors to your web page. You're probably going to want to add some colors to your website. And the way you're going to need to do this is through applying some CSS colors to the properties of the elements on your page. Now, we've already seen one of the simpler ways of changing the colors, and that's to use the name of a color, such as red, green, blue, yellow, etc. But there are only about 140 colors that you have to pick from that have this named color. So, to get a little bit more complex of a palette, you can use hex values. And a hex value is simply the hashtag or £sign followed by 6 or 8 characters. Now, 6 characters, the first two would be the strength of R, red. Then the second 2 characters would be the strength of G for green. And the third 2 characters would be the strength of B for blue. So that's why we call it RGB, red, green, blue. If you look on the right side of this hex value, you'll notice that the 8 characters also has a final F1, which is actually how opaque you want to have this color. So do you want it to have some transparency, or do you not want it to have any transparency at all? If you leave off these final 2 characters, then you're going to have no transparency. It's going to be fully opaque. Another way you can set the colors is to use RGB. And RGB is effectively a method that takes in those 3 values we talked about before. But instead of the hexadecimal values of 00 through FF, we can instead actually use numerical values of 0 through 255. So we can see we're passing into this RGB method the first value for red of 255, then 99 for green, and 71 for blue. Now on the right, you can see the RGBA method, which takes in 4 values. The first 3 are of course the same as RGB, which is red, green, and blue. And then the final value is going to be the transparency. Now this value needs to be a value from 1 to 0, whereas 1 is the most opaque and 0 is the most transparent. The fourth common way you might run across of how these CSS color values might be set is the HSL method, or HSLA. Now, H stands for hue, the S stands for saturation, and L stands for lightness. The hue can be any value from 0 to 359. There's effectively 360 different starting colors. And then the saturation is going to dictate exactly how much of that color is going to be visible. And this will go all the way from the strength of 100% being all of that color to 0 basically being gray. And finally, the number 64% here is how light it's supposed to be. So 0 being no lightness at all, and then 100% would be basically completely white. Once again, just similar to the RGB method, there is, for HSL, there's an HSLA, which allows you to pass in a 4th value that again determines the transparency or the opaque nature of this color, with 1 being fully opaque and 0 being transparent. Now, if you're wondering how do you come up with these numbers, these values for the hex value, RGB, or the HSL, there's actually some really handy tools that I'm going to show you to, number 1, pick whichever color you're looking for, but also I'm going to show you a really helpful website that'll allow you to find some corresponding colors so that you can actually decide the entire color palette for your website. The first page I want to show you is the W3 Schools Color Picker webpage, where you can find all sorts of different colors and make your adjustments to then generate out which named color, which hexadecimal value color you have, which RGB method you have picked, or which HSL value you've picked. So you can go about just picking any one of your colors here. So like, for example, white changes the hexadecimal to pound FFFFFF, or RGB 25, 25, or 255, 255, 255, etc. So you can definitely just simply pick a color here and it will give you the values there. Or you can also go down here and you can see kind of the whole structure of from the hue of a color. You can see the hue values here on the left and the corresponding hex, RGB, and HSL values, as well as the saturation. So of course, as you get to more and more gray, you can see the percentage of the saturation goes down to 0. And then lightness is the same thing. And then of course, down here at the bottom is a nifty little tool that you can use the slider to change how much red and green and blue you're applying. And once again, it will give you those RGB and hash value or hexadecimal values. This is really good for picking a single color where you're just wanting to find one color that you think is going to fit your needs, but you're not necessarily working with an entire palette. You're just trying to find something that looks good. Again, this page is w3schools.com/colors/colorspicker.asp. And there's one more thing I want to show you on this. If you click on the color names tab over here on the left, you'll also get what those 140 colors are that are built in, the named colors that are built into HTML. So you can pick like navy or olive drab or orchid, etc. The other webpage I want to show you is the color.adobe.com website. And you may have to create a login in order to get this, and it's free to use, so don't worry about that. But what's great about this is that it gives you an entire color palette based upon some base colors. So here you can see just kind of the default color scheme that it picks. And if I move these wheels around, you can see that it automatically adjusts them accordingly. So as I move them around, it'll automatically kind of pick out a theme for me. So these are a theme of colors. But I can change the color harmony. So right now it's just kind of analogous. So these are similar like colors. If I wanted to have a very, like say, picking the colors of a slide deck or something, or if I really want to make my page one particular color scheme that's kind of in the same general hue, then I would use analogous. But I can click on this drop down and I can pick what I like, which is complementary. And these are showing kind of the opposites, right? This more or less the opposite colors on the spectrum. And these are complementary colors. So if you have like a dark background with a kind of reddish or whatever this DB5448 color is, then those two colors typically go well together in some way. So it kind of gives you a good little theme here. Another one is to use triads, which again gives you a good kind of contrast between three different colors. And you can again move this color wheel around a little bit and just kind of move, as you move them, it'll again adjust the other triad or the other corresponding colors, again giving you a good palette to your website. So you don't, if you're ever wondering like what color goes well with what other colors, this is exactly a tool that I would use. So usually it's complementary, split complementary, triad. I haven't tried square before, but I imagine it's probably something like this, which again, I think is probably going to be pretty complementary, where if you have one color as the background and another color as the font color or something like that, then you're probably going to be just fine using a palette like this. All right, so let's go ahead and hop into a demo here and see how we can apply what we've learned. Here's where we left our website before with a red text here and a blue text here and a black text here. And we were using our CSS selectors to select the color property of the font effectively of each one of these elements for a paragraph elements or any classes with any elements with the class of center or any ID of header. Well, there's only one ID of header that we've set the color to red. So we've just basically been using the name syntax of our colors. And if I go here, I'm just going to change red to, I don't know, can I do maroon? There we go, which is another kind of red. Maybe I prefer that color over the red I've been doing, and it's a little darker. Okay, so I can just simply use the names. Now, I did want to show you that when we type in these names, notice that we get this square next to the named color, that if we hover our mouse over it, we get this cool little color selector. Now, this doesn't give us the names of colors, which is something I kind of wish that it did do, was give us the names. But we can use IntelliSense here. As you saw when I started to type in maroon, it gave me any of the colors that started with M. So if I want to do something like midnight blue instead, I could select it from the IntelliSense. But the color picker itself doesn't really give me the ability to select the name of the color. But we do see that we get the RGB. So we've got the red of 25, the green of 25, and the blue of 112. And if I click on this where it says RGB, I can actually change it to hexadecimal or the HSL. And then there's another one called HWB, but I don't really ever see HWB, so I just typically skip over it. But there's usually RGB or hex or the name of the color itself. Now, in order to adjust these values, I can simply use the color selector to just scroll up, changing the hue, or scroll down, right, on this little selector here to change the hue. And then here I can go ahead and kind of adjust the opaque nature of it. So this is fully opaque, and you can see when I go all the way up, when I move the slider all the way up, we don't get RGBA anymore, we get the RGB, and there's no fourth value. But as soon as I start to move the scroll wheel down, we get RGBA, which adds that fourth value. I can also move the dot here that selects the color around to kind of pick maybe a little bit more what I'm looking for. And once I've selected what I'm looking for, I think I'm actually going to go a little darker here because I'm going to have a white background. So once I've got that selected and I've decided whether I want my hexadecimal, which again, if you take a look, here's the hexadecimal, and you can see it's 8 characters now. So we have 8 characters for that hex code because C2 is again the opacity, transparency of this color. Okay, so if you just want to click through and set them into different things, you can figure out which one you want, and then you can use the color picker this way in order to adjust it. Or if you already have a color picked out from, say, the Adobe color wheel or using the W3 Schools color selector, then you can obviously just drop that in here as well. Okay, let's set some properties here. Let's just kind of fool around here. I don't have anything set in mind, so this might look a little ugly a few times, and that's one of the great things about CSS, I think, is it's kind of an adventure. Is this color actually going to work the way that I'm looking for it to? So let's do a background color and set it to, let's see, what's going to look good against that kind of dark bluish green. Let's go with a Blanche Almond. Let's see what that looks like. And you know what? I kind of want to maybe mess with that color a little bit. So I'm going to click on this and, oh, wait, just hover the mouse. I don't need to click on it. There we go. Let's add a little bit more orange nature to it. I think I want to add a little orangish to it. Still a little bit more. Okay, so it's kind of like a sandalwood maybe. Oh, that turned a little dark on me. There, that's a little lighter. Okay, so now that I've picked that color scheme, I've got, again, autosave set up on my on Visual Studio Code. So I can just go over here to the web page and refresh, and aha! All right, well, that's not terrible. I think maybe I need to go a little lighter on that background color, though. It's a little too dark, so let's do this. And a little lighter. There we go. Okay. Let's refresh. That's a little bit better. Okay, so that's definitely what I typically do is I like to go through and just kind of either pick from my color wheel on Adobe Color, or I'll use the W3 Schools to kind of pick my color schemes, and then just kind of tweak and fiddle around with it on using the Visual Studio Code color picker. I'd like to thank these members for joining the channel. Your contributions monthly help keep this channel alive. Thank you.